Well, I think the best way of understanding it is that there aren't really any things. Say, well, things are impermanent because they aren't really any things. They're processes that never stop transforming. So there is no actual sort of abiding in time, because even when we say something is in the mind, it's in a state of change as it's being known. So that you can say this is a building, or this is a monastery, but anything is a convenient fiction. Like say, I am Ajahn Amaro, or this is a building, or this is Dhammagiri Hermitage. That's a convenient fiction for the purposes of, well, this isn't the government building in Canberra. It's Dhammagiri Hermitage in Queensland. So for convenience and for sort of making our way through a day, then we use these ways of designation. But I would say that it's more accurate to see there aren't really any things. But for convenience we say floor, ceiling, person, building, etc., etc. And so in a way there is no such thing as impermanence, because there's no thing to be impermanent. But there's the four elements, and the mental realm is in a constant state of transformation. All those aspects of the physical and mental world, the Rupakhandas and the Rupakhandha and the Namakhandas, they're constantly in a state of flux. And even if something can be said to hold together for a long, long time, like a proton, you can say, well, if you know a bit of physics, it takes a long, 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 long time for a proton to decay, but it will. But then what do you measure that long time against? If you measure it against a human life, it's a long, 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 long time. If you measure it against the life of universal timescales, it can be regarded as very short. So things that we consider to be permanent or long-lasting, it's important to consider the scale that we're measuring things with. So that one of the aspects of mind that I feel is useful to contemplate, the Buddha said, it's pamanakara, it's a maker of measurement. So ignorance is a maker of measurement, desire is a maker of measurement, fear, aversion, it's a maker of measurement. So when we measure things, big, small, long, short, beautiful, ugly, then those measurements are influenced by the conditioning of the mind. And similarly, when talking about his own nature, the Buddha said the Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned, from being measured in terms of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. So I think that, I feel that in terms of this kind of contemplation of anicca and the material world or the mental world, that just taking a simple principle like greed is a maker of measurement, aversion is a maker of measurement, and the delusion is a maker of measurement, pamanakara. And incidentally, that's spelled out in detail in a discourse given by a layperson to a monk, one of the very few. There's not many. But there's a very, very wise householder called Chitta, as in heart, mind. And so he's a very brilliant Dhamma teacher, and he's giving this Dhamma talk to a monk. Anyway, so pamanakara, like the greed, hatred and delusion, they're makers of measurement. And without greed, hatred and delusion, then the mind doesn't make those measurements or doesn't believe in the absolute nature of those measurements. So in a very simple way, Luang Por Chah would take something like this and say, is this big or small? Well, if you're a mosquito, it's quite big. If you're an elephant, it's very small. So how big is it? Is this big or small? Is it heavy or light? Well, if you're an ant, you would have trouble picking it up. But as a human being or as an elephant, it's quite light. So, is it heavy or light? And that he would use these ordinary everyday ways of helping us to reflect on that. The way we measure things, we determine things, beautiful, ugly, good, bad, should be, shouldn't be, and so on, because of our habits of judgment. So with respect to Aniccā, that kind of reflection or understanding, I don't know if that's helpful for what you're asking, but that kind of way of seeing that, anything that we call a thing, like the Pali word sankhara is very close to the English word thing, which has a big range of of qualities it can refer to. That as soon as we call something a thing, like this is a bell striker, you know as you say that that's a convenient fiction. It can't be an absolute fact. And so that if we really take that to heart, then assuming anything could be permanent becomes ridiculous. That you're not surprised by things changing, because how could they not? You're not surprised by instability or uncertainty, because, well, how could it be certain, or how could it be stable? It's just not the way things are. Even like, as I said, like in the material world, you can say, well, space is permanent. Well, not if you study physics on this cosmological scale or microscopic scale. No, space is very conditioned. Or like a material form, a proton or a neutron. Okay, well, they last a really, really long time. Well, yes and no. So that way that the mind looks at the material world, the mental world, it then is changed. You're not looking for permanent or expecting permanence or stability in a place where it can't be established. And again, as Luang Por Chah will put it very, very, very simply, if you're looking for stability in that which is unstable, you have to be disappointed. If you look for certainty in that which is uncertain, you have to be disappointed, because you won't find it there. So when the contemplation of anicca, developing the anicca sanya, is taken, I would say, as the kind of, within the southern Buddhist world, that's the chief way of developing, the kind of main gateway for development of wisdom, is to develop the anicca sanya, the perception of uncertainty. And so that it changes the way that that the mind habitually looks at our possessions, our mental faculties, our relationships, the world around us, the things that we cherish, like say, this is a really wonderful monastery, this is so perfect, this is so ideal at the moment, but this is a very combustible world. And so that the way that you hold it is with a different attitude. There isn't the kind of unconscious sense of owning. And again, another of the very helpful reflections that Luang Por Chah would give was that he'd hold up something like this and say, "This is a broken cup," or "This is a broken glass." And I fully I was saying this when I was at Buddha Bodhiwana Monastery, that at first I thought, that's interesting, I can't see the crack. I thought, it's not even, he's got some water in it, it's not even leaking. Well, it can't be that broken. So I didn't quite get the point, first of all. And I couldn't understand the Thai in any detail at all. But what he's saying is that if you can see that this is already broken, that one day the elements will come apart and you won't be surprised or disappointed. That rather, it's the change is continuing, rather than this is a cup. That's what it said. Well, no, it's a set of, it's earth, water, fire, and wind in a state of change. This was earth, probably Australian earth, maybe Chinese earth, or Thai earth. It's Thai, made in Thailand. Thai earth. Maybe Chinese earth put together in Thailand. But Australian water, Australian heat. So it's earth, water, fire and wind put together in a certain form, and we call it mug. we call it, a Thai mug with beautiful decorations. But if there's a recognition, if there's a development of the anicca sanya, it's like, well, that's just a way of talking about this particular collection of perceptions. There isn't really any absolute mug there. And so that the more that the anicca sanya is developed, then it changes the whole way we relate to the people around us, the places where we live, our own physical well-being, the society. We stop taking things for granted. And we become more appreciative. Okay, in this moment, this is very helpful, very useful, but any moment it can all go. So it changes the attitude, and so much of Buddha Dhamma and the training, the kind of embodying the Eightfold Path, is to do with changing the attitude. So that developing the anicca sanya, the perception of uncertainty, is about transforming the attitude, how we relate to our body, our personality, our career, our relationships, our possessions, and so on and so forth.
Just want to follow that up. So how tight should we hold on to things? Like, should we let go, or should we hold on but not too tight? What's the attitude? Like, what should we?
Well, if you really consider what I was just saying, what is there to hold on to? You can't really hold on to anything, and there isn't really anybody to do any holding. So talking about letting go is already kind of, you're halfway down the track. It's like there isn't really a me who's actually holding on. It just feels that way. Like, well, I'm not ready for this. I don't agree with this. Like yesterday in the vehicle, I was talking about this fellow I knew in California, a guy called Ken Price, and he's a very practical guy, very sort of can-do American fellow. The only clothes he owned were Levi jeans, cowboy boots, and check shirts. And he had like several sets. He didn't have any other clothes. That was a kind of regular American guy, and he used to run a repair shop in the local town. And he was the kind of can-do guy. Nothing would get in his way. He was very sort of rigorously independent. So he also didn't look after his health terribly well. So and where he lived was quite damp, and so through the winter times he'd get pneumonia or pleurisy, serious bronchitis and such like. And he'd walk from his home to the clinic and he had like double pneumonia. I guess I should get some treatment. Anyway, he was a very sweet guy, but very kind of no nonsense, and so he had some more chest pains and some lung problems, and he walked from his home to the clinic, keeled over on the lawn outside the front of the clinic, and so the nurses all sort of came running out, started looking to take care of him, and he's lying there and says, "What's happening?" He said, "You're having a heart attack, Ken." He said, "Oh," and then we're calling the helicopter. "What? I'm not ready for this." Like I haven't booked one of these. And it was his daughters were telling me the account of this, and they strapped him onto the gurney on the side of the helicopter because where he was living was quite remote. There was no really good cardiac place nearby, so I had to fly him into San Francisco to get treatment. And so they'd strapped him onto the gurney outside the helicopter to fly him into the hospital. And as they were strapping him, he said, "Okay, I guess I'm ready." But his first thought was like, "No, this isn't my program for the day. I can't be having a heart attack. I've got things to do." Yeah, like, well, different program. And so that's in a sense of going from wait a minute, I didn't ask for this, or this shouldn't be happening, to here it is, I'm being strapped on the helicopter. He actually died on the flight into the city. So I did his funeral. They told me the stories at his funeral. So, but he was ready by the time they took off. But I was touched by that kind of contrast of, I'm in charge of my life. I know, I make decisions here, And then nature says, do you? So that sense of letting go, it's not really ours to let go of. It's not really ours to own. There isn't anything that can really be owned. So, Luang Por Chah would talk about holding but not clinging. So we hold this body, we hold the material objects, this coffee cup, So we pick things up and we use our bodies, our minds, the material world around us, but without an attitude of grasping or ownership. And so that then we look at the things of the world, our bodies, our minds, the living situation that we have. These are things we are connected to, our families, this body, the living world. We're connected to it, but the citta, the heart, can relate to the living world from a place of non-ownership, non-possession, that anadana, not owning, not an attitude of non-ownership, non-possessiveness. And then, strangely enough, when we have that attitude of non-possessiveness, we're able to be much more effective in helping other beings, being useful for our family and in the workplace. So, that holding but not clinging is a good principle. Things even when Luang Por Chah would use a phrase like holding but not clinging, it means using our capacity to act, to make choices, that things can be done, words can be said, actions can be taken that genuinely benefit other beings. That's the case. We can make choices, and those choices make a difference. Otherwise, the Buddha would never have taught, right? So we can make choices, and the choices do make a difference. So that's the case. So that's the holding part. But the clinging part is like, I want this result, and I don't want that result, and it's me who's responsible. Oh, it's me who's responsible, or I'm in charge here. I didn't agree to this. And that all of that clinging, that always brings more tension, more agitation, more suffering. So in terms of developing the path, then it's a lot to do with learning how to let intention and action, Samma Sankappo, the second factor of the Eightfold Path, and Samma Vayamo, in particular, right effort, be guided by mindfulness and wisdom. So the choices that we make, the direction that we set for our life, the way that we work with in our job, in the family, in the world, that if that can be based on mindfulness and wisdom rather than on me and mine, then that's in a way guiding that quality of holding. So if we have skillful intention, skillful effort, then that informs the Samma Vacha, the right speech, Samma Kammanto, right action, Samma Achivo, right livelihood, that informs all of those. But that's not easy to do. You can't just say, okay, from today onwards, no more self-view. Switch that one off. This life will solely be guided by mindfulness and wisdom from now on. That's a good idea. Because the one that's making that decision is not the same as the one who's driving the what about me and what I like and my preferences there. One is Apple, the other is PC. They're on different programs. If you follow what I mean. So
what you mean things like just acting in your own capacity, of understanding and just doing good for the majority of people. Whatever happens as a result of that, it's just up to the nature.
Pretty much, yeah. It's the more that action, intention, action, and decisions can be guided by mindfulness and wisdom, rather than my mindfulness or me being wise, me doing the right thing. But the more that there's the I and me and mine is left out of the picture. And if we use the meditation and wise reflection to develop that skill of not letting the habits of self-view guide even the meditation. Right? I need to practice. I need to get rid of my chattering thoughts. I need to develop concentration. I need more wisdom. I need to get rid of my defilements. I'm unenlightened. I've got to do something now to become enlightened in the future. You might think, well, isn't that the plan, Ajahn? That's what it says in the Dhamma, the list of good things to do. But if you listen to the words I was using, it's like, I've got a lot of chattering thoughts. I need to get rid of my defilements. I need to get more concentrated. I am unenlightened. I need to be more enlightened. All that I and me and mine doesn't need to be there. So, and Luang Por Sumedho's teachings have focused on that a lot for the last 30 years or so. 40 years probably, since the early 90s. 40 years. Since the mid-80s, I would say that he's focused a lot on that. So he'd say things like, the idea that most of us think I'm an unenlightened person who's got to do something now to become enlightened in the future. You sit there listening to that and say, right. Isn't that the program? Yeah. And he'd say, so we need to change the paradigm from I am an unenlightened person to be awake now. Because if we go with the first one, I am an unenlightened person, then the practice of Dhamma is being cast in the mold of self-view, starting from a position of I am and believing in that. So rather than starting with self-view as a sort of fixed reality, I am an unenlightened person, in a way it's taking a step back and saying, well, here's the awake mind is capable of knowing all those personal qualities arising and passing away. This mind that knows the person isn't a person. This awareness that knows the personal is not a person. Like the Buddha said, that the Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned in terms of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. As he's sitting there right there having a conversation with Vajragota, and he says, the Tathagata is liberated from being reckoned, can't be measured in terms of the five khandhas, even as there's a body sitting there talking to another human being. You can't define this quality in terms of the five khandhas, in terms of our usual reference points. So when we say, I am an unenlightened person, then right there, there's self-view is being sort of inked in. And so what Luang Por Sumedho would try to encourage us in his teaching to get a sense for is, that to practice Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma is to be guided by mindfulness and wisdom, not by me and mine, that I'm an unenlightened person, or I have got a lot of defilements I need to get rid of, I've got to develop concentration, I've got to get more insight. So that it's not that insight is not useful or concentration is not useful or that defilements are not obstructive. They are. But if the effort to practice Dhamma is all based on I am a person, I exist in time, I was born on such and such a date, I have this name, this nationality, that's all self-view, 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 self-view. So, and that's the first obstacle to enlightenment is Sakkaya Ditthi, self-view. So his teaching, Luang Por Sumedho in particular, would shine a bright light on that. Look at the way that the mind keeps inking self-view in and taking that as the basis. And the more that is done, then the result is necessarily going to be dukkha, disappointing. Yeah. So that, and most meditation retreats and teachings that I've given in the last 2 or 3 years, I've tried to emphasize this. One of the fourth of the 4 factors supportive of stream entry is called Dhammanu Dhamma Patipada, practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. So the alternative is practicing Dhamma in accordance with self-view. So if practicing Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma, Dhammanu Dhamma Patipada, then that then the efforts and the direction being given are not based on self-view. They are guided by mindfulness and wisdom itself. And sometimes when we're looking at Buddhist practice, then it can seem like any kind of directionality or any kind of effort is going to be stressful. Like, they have people like Krishnamurti wrote a book called "Truth is a Pathless Land," or there's a famous Dhamma book, "Journey Without a Goal," I think by Chogyam Trungpa. So the idea of no effort to be made, no goal, no effort, and all efforting or any kind of goal is somehow stressful. But I would say that's a wrong understanding of the Eightfold Path, personally. Because otherwise, how could samā sankappo, how could there be right resolution, right intention? There has to be a way that setting a direction for our life is totally in accordance with Dhamma, otherwise that couldn't be a part of the Eightfold Path. So there has to be a way that decisions can be made, like, yes, this is a good way to go, that's a bad way to go. Those choices can be made completely based on Dhamma, not based on self-view or anything that's going to produce more stress or more dukkha in our lives. Similarly, samā vayāma, right effort, there has to be a way that effort can be made without it being stressful or burdensome. Because otherwise you couldn't have samā vayāma as part of the Eightfold Path. It's got to be, there's got to be a way that we can work and make effort and go places, do things that is completely stress-free. Otherwise you couldn't have samā vayāma. So our ordinary worldly way of thinking is, oh, thank goodness it's the weekend. Don't have to work. Or even in a meditation, I like to point out, oh, thank goodness that's over. So, I'm not reading anybody's mind. I always say that. So, how did he know? I say it's statistics, not psychic power. So it's just how we are as human. Even the meditation becomes this thing I have to do, or I'm supposed to be doing, and thank goodness that's over. And the most peaceful moment is where I don't have to I don't have to be doing anything. So letting go of I and doing and thingness is more the point. So if with the use of the practice, there can be a development of that sense of setting a direction, making effort, free of self-view, then it's not stressful or burdensome to be taking action or to be making choices, giving a direction to our life, and so that it's difficult to get a feeling for how that works. But I would say with meditation practice and wise reflection, that's something we can get a feel for. I would say we know how to follow a path without it being stressful. Like going for a walk in the park. You can see where the path is, and you're just going for a walk. You're not trying to get somewhere, you're just walking. But you've got a direction, and you're making effort. So we know how to have a direction and make effort in a relaxed way. Or if you're driving, that you've got the white lines either side of you, you don't have to keep thinking about staying between the white lines. It's not stressful, it's just letting you know how to drive, and along you go, and then the lines guide you in a very natural, easy, matter-of-fact way. It's not burdensome or even that limiting, because the setting of the direction and maintaining the direction happens quite comfortably. So we do know how to do that, but we don't really know how to do that with our own minds. Walking in the park or driving, commuting to work in our car, that's familiar territory. But having that same kind of natural setting of a direction and making effort in terms of mind training is more challenging for us. We tend to take it very personally, like, I've got to get rid of this, I've got to become that, I should be doing this. The Ajahn said such and such, so I should be doing that, and I shouldn't be doing this. So transferring that natural ability to make effort and set a direction and follow that with mind training, that's I would say is the one of the big challenges that we have. So please, any other questions? Yeah.
You were talking about don't cling to anything. There's a nice
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that one, now if one is getting a chance to the Dhamma practice, so that it's hard to not cling to it. It's something very important to you, and then how do you work around it?
Well, that kind of clinging is called Dhammaraga, Dhammanandya and Dhammaraga. So in some of the suttas, the Buddha talks about that someone gets overexcited about the Dhamma, Dhammanandya, joyfulness, getting too excited about the Dhamma. Then I wouldn't say it's that much of a problem. He said they might only reach the level of anagami. So if that's the only obstructions that are getting in the way, then you have to settle for anagami-ship rather than arahant-ship. So it's not that much of a problem, I would suggest. So it's a problem, but it's not. You could have worse problems. But it is in that those teachings the Buddha is pointing out that is an obstacle. If you are that kind of over enthusiasm, Dhammaraga, passion for the Dhamma, or Dhammanandya, joy, the kind of enthusiasm or joyfulness in the Dhamma. But I would say one of the most helpful approaches in that respect is developing mindfulness of the body, because when there is that kind of excitement or enthusiasm, then there's a sort of resonance in the body. Your body gets more tense and more agitated, and so to help develop a bit more of a calm and less excited attitude, then to develop mindfulness of the body, to relax the body. And it's very hard for the mind to stay excited if the body is very relaxed, just as it's very hard for the mind to stay anxious or afraid if the body is very relaxed. So that kind of enthusiasm might be there, but if you bring attention into the body, do what you can to relax the body. Also just focusing on the out-breath, which is the natural way of relaxing, releasing tension and so on, then that can help to a certain degree. That would be my advice anyway. You had your hand up as well.
Ajahn, I don't know how to word it, but I know there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is what I get from practical things I gathered and reading. How do I actually practically develop this wisdom, which is the quality that I want? Because it's such a grey area for me personally. I want to get it. I know that's naive.
Yes. Well, there's a few lines in one of T.S. Eliot's poems. He says, I think it's The Hollow Men. Where is the wisdom that is lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge that is lost in information? So I think it's very helpful, sort of three-layer cake. So information is the actual sort of pieces of fact, and so the mechanics of how the world works, whether it's the mental world, physical world, social world, whatever. So the information is the sort of ground level. Then knowledge, I would say, is a comprehension of how those pieces of information fit together. Some of the patterns of the natural world and of the social landscape and so on and so forth. So knowledge is in the ordinary usage of the word is knowing about things, and knowing how things fit together and work together. So our educational systems are mostly geared towards the development of knowledge, gathering the information, putting it together, and making good use of it, and recognizing patterns in the things that are known that are then beneficial, whether it's even in Dhamma, whether it's in Dhamma, whether it's in biology, whether it's in mathematics, whether it's in English literature, whatever it might be, all those different domains. So wisdom is non-conceptual and non-verbal. It's the quality within the Buddhist usage of the term. So panya is mostly, almost exclusively, panya is referring to a non-conceptual, non-verbal awareness of things. So satipanya in particular, so mindfulness and wisdom. So sometimes the word panya means intelligence and the capacity to think. So it is a bit more tied to conceptual knowledge and thinking and so on. How we would think of as the meaning of the word intelligence. But mostly, I would say, when we're talking about wisdom in our teachings and practice and the development of wisdom, it's very close to the quality of awareness itself, or awakened awareness, which is a non-conceptual, non-verbal quality. And so that that quality of wisdom is, its essence is that awake, aware quality. And then beyond the information that's there, and beyond even the conceptual understanding, it's the aspect of mind that knows in this moment this is a pattern of experience put together through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and that and wisdom in its most profound or complete sense, it's knowing that all sankharas are empty, all sankharas are anicca, dukkha, anatta, everything is anicca, dukkha, anatta, and so that's like an ongoing appreciation. If wisdom is firmly established, if the heart is appreciating each moment with mindfulness and wisdom, then it will be seeing and knowing everything within the framework of anicca, dukkha, anatta, and that is as the recognition that this is the mind's representation of the world. It's not the world. It's my mind's version of the world. So that in essence, wisdom, from the Buddhist perspective, or mindfulness and wisdom, satipanya, it's more to do with a way of seeing and knowing in a completely unobstructed fashion. So it is in itself non-conceptual, non-verbal. It's knowing the conceptual and the verbal and the experiential, the patterns of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, and emotion and memory and imagination and so on. It's the quality that knows those and knows that these are all fabricated and in a state of flux. Yeah? But it's not identifying with any of those perceptions, but even the perceptions of the body or the people around you and your family and so on, that that quality of wisdom is seeing everything in a true context, seeing it in its true light.
Is that the anicca reflection?
Well, anicca, the reflection on anicca is a way of helping that wisdom to be established, so that we assume nicca and atta, yeah, it's permanent, and it's me that is experiencing this world, which is real and solid and dependable. And so the reflections on anicca, dukkha and anatta is because we keep seeing things in terms of nicca, sukha and atta. So it's like, wait a minute, no, it's not nicca, sukha and atta, it's anicca, dukkha and anatta. So it's like those reflections are counteracting our ignorant worldview.
How do you expand on anicca? Is it like, I know I'm young, middle-aged, or is that the anicca you're referring to, or is it something?
Oh, it's much more comprehensive than that. It's like, as I was saying to this gentleman before everybody else arrived, there's no thing to be anicca. So anicca is a convenient fiction, because for something to be impermanent, then there's got to be a thing there. But essentially, there aren't really any things. There is a flow of perception and experience that's in a constant state of change, of flux. And some things move slowly, like building, like human body, and so we can say this is a building, this is a person, but it is in a state of change. Or I was giving the example of like a proton in the physical world. You can say, well, that's really stable. Protons last a long time, but they're impermanent. You know, if you compare them to a human lifespan, they last a long time, but in cosmological terms, you know, a proton can come into being and can dissolve, and it is still a limited period of time. It might be billions of years, human years, but it still arises and passes away. So that in a way, the reflection on Aniccā is in respect of the ignorant view that anything could be Nicca. Just like saying things are not self is counteracting the ignorant view that there's any qualities that could be a self or belong to a self. So that it's changing the view, and so the wisdom mind, when wisdom is properly established, then there's the recognition that there isn't anything that could be Nicca, and there isn't anything that could be owned. And no being that could own it, and that's an ongoing appreciation. That's the framework. There isn't anybody that can do any owning, and no thing that can be owned. Oh, that's very threatening to our ego. But my stuff, my body, my family, my job, yeah, my career, my publications. Yeah. But they never really were ours in the first place. So I like the term convenient fiction. So like saying this is my body, or this is Dhammagiri Forest Hermitage, it's a convenient fiction. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong or bad about it, it's just, 20 years ago this wasn't Dhammagiri Forest Hermitage, correct? It was had another name. And in previous centuries, millennia, other names or no name. So we create these names, these designations. We say floor, we say ceiling, we say person, we say microphone, as convenient fictions. They are convenient. They kind of help us to get through a day. And as Luang Por Chah would say, if we didn't have names, life would be very difficult. There'd just be person, 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 and person. Working out the washing up rota, or the dana rota, person, 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 and person. That's this week organised. Yeah. So it's the anicca sanya, the development of that appreciation of uncertainty or impermanence within the southern Buddhist world. That's recognised as that's the main gateway to wisdom, to changing that view, that recognition. Oh. There never was anything that is permanent, that could be permanent, and there never will be. Oh. And so when the mind sees things with wisdom, then that's like an automatic appreciation of the things that are around you, the things that comprise you, the things that you're using, so that the mind holds it in a very, very different way. So, as I was saying to this young gentleman, that was you still can make use of those convenient fictions. We still hold, and the things that we do, the choices we make a difference, and the genuine benefit can be given. That's why the Lord Buddha spoke. That's why he taught for 45 years. He saw that even though words are just conditioned noises. And words and actions can have effects on other beings' minds, and the changes that can be brought about in other beings or in this being are radical, and they're genuine. So the Buddha talked about two kinds of miracle. He said there's two kinds of miracle: the miracle of psychic power and the miracle of instruction. And of those two, the miracle of instruction is superior. That's in the Kevada Sutta, he says that, the Digha Nikaya. So that the miracle of it's amazing. Words are they're conditioned things, they're just noises. That certain words can land in certain ears, and they're understood in a certain way, and the result can be total liberation from greed, hatred and delusion. Amazing. So that's using the patterns of the conditioned world to help the citta to realize the unconditioned. There was even one monk who became enlightened listening to his own Dhammatalk. Venerable Khemaka. So he was very aged and quite ill, and he was persuaded to from his deathbed. His friends had sent a message to ask whether he'd reached the end of his practice, whether he'd realized enlightenment. And then the young monk who was sent to ask him this question, he said, "Well, tell them no, I haven't finished my work yet." So he goes scooting back to these other elders. They say, "In what way has he not finished his practice yet?" Comes back. They're asking you, in what way have you not finished your practice? Well, I haven't fully let go of all greed, hatred, and delusion. In what way have you not fully let go of greed, hatred, and delusion? And so this runner goes back and forth 3 or 4 times, and finally Venerable Khemaka says, "These friends of mine are insufferable." So he gets off his deathbed, walks through the monastery, goes to see his friends who keep sending these questions, and then he gives this really wonderful teaching. He says, "So I've truly seen the empty nature, the insubstantial nature of the 5 khandhas. There's no attachment to the 5 khandhas, the form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, but the feeling of I still hovers around. Even though it's not attached to anything in particular, the sense of I and me and mine." It says, rather like with a flower, you can smell the fragrance of a flower, but you can't tell whether it comes from the stamens, from the pollen, from the petals, from the sepals, or where it comes from. But you can smell. The smell is there. The fragrance is there. So even though I can't pin down where this feeling of I is attached to the Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, still this I, me, my feeling hovers around. And as he's giving that Dhamma talk, then his heart is liberated from all greed, hatred and delusion, and some of his friends were as well. So it's a very successful Dhamma talk. So he even got, Venerable Khemaka got enlightened, listening to his own teaching. So that's it's kind of a double miracle. Listening to your own instructions, like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. So, but I feel it's helpful to, the English use of the word wisdom is usually to do with some kind of magical powers, or some sort of an old man with a long beard and a pointy hat, or a woman with a strange brews of magical potions in a pot, and that a wise woman is conjuring up remedies and such like. So wisdom in the English usage of the word is quite different, has those different associations. Having sort of knowledge about magical, etheric aspects of the universe. So the Buddhist use of the word panya, particularly satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom, I think it's helpful to understand it's not about knowledge, it's not about information, it's about awareness. Principally is the quality of awakened awareness itself. But it's an awareness not just that's recording data, but it's an awareness of the nature of all experience, the fundamental nature of all experience as being empty, insubstantial, and that. So it's an awakened awareness of things seen in their true light, I would say.
So it's to go beyond that default habit.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, which is a real challenge.
And it's where education is an obstacle. So the more information you've got, the more you've taken refuge in conceptual understanding. I'm not putting down educational system. There's probably a few lecturers and professors and school teachers here. So, but it is because the mind easily takes refuge in conceptual understanding and having an explanation, having a reason, having information. I'm aware of this. I grew up wanting to know everything. I used to read encyclopedias when I was a small child. I just sit down and sort of have a volume of the Britannica on my lap at the age of 7 or 8, just trying to learn everything, wanting to have an answer for everything. So I understand about taking refuge in knowledge and information. And that when the more that becomes a well-worn track, and the more that your mind is able to make a case for anything and everything, then that well-worn track means the mind will easily go in that direction. To not go in that direction, to not follow that habit, but to step back and to apply mindfulness and wisdom itself.
Catch-22, because the well-known track is there, but it's trying to not go that way and go this way.
Indeed, it's so the mind easily goes to having an idea about reality rather than being awake. I mean, even in meditation, it's you can find yourself the mind in that sort of there's a clear moment. A moment of great clarity, and the mind is really awake, and then there's a thought, oh, my mind is really awake, this is great, the practice is really going well. I'm just being the knowing. But no, you just grasp the thought, and the mind has been born into that, giving a narrative about it, so that it's actually not knowing that thought, I'm just being the knowing, it's born into that. So the challenge is always to, as it were, stay at the back wall of awareness, and not to be born into the easy commentating about it. Or
So it's discipline and effort.
Discipline and effort, absolutely. Yeah. And ridiculous amounts of patience. Ridiculous amounts of patience are essential, I would say. So, any folks from the back? We've had everybody from the front row so far. Yes. Second row.
I just want to follow up with the knowledge and wisdom. So I have a question. How do you, the technique to do the body contemplation? So I know there's a sutta that you can recite inside of your mind, 32 parts of the body. But also if you recite it, you haven't seen the photos or the pictures of inside of your body. Do you need to have a medical encyclopedia or medical dictionary to actually see the pictures, so that you can borrow the knowledge there to recite it and visualize in your mind, so that when my question has two parts. So when you have a desire, mind came up, then you can use that as a technique with the body contemplation to calm your mind down. The second part is, if you have wisdom, as soon as you have that kind of desire mind came up, you realize it, you stand back and withdraw yourself in the emptiness mind, the empty mind, then actually you don't need that technique anymore. Am I correct? So that's a two aspects. So one is a borrow wisdom, knowledge. One is the wisdom with the mindfulness.
Well, with respect to the body contemplation I was talking about, with the Dhammanandya, Dhammaraga, that's much more to do with the felt sense of the body, not the contemplating the 32 parts. The feelings of your body, like right now, the feeling of your body, its weight on the ground, or the temperature of the room, or the sensation of the shirts that you're wearing, that the feeling, the physical sensations of the body, which so that the contemplation of 32 parts is useful for sure, but in terms of counteracting sort of emotional excitement, then that it's really the direct attention to the sensations of the body, the Vedana. That's what I was really referring to as the access point. In terms of what you're asking about, the 32 parts and medical knowledge, it can be that can be useful. I wouldn't say it's required, sometimes the knowledge of the anatomy doesn't have a direct effect. It kind of divorces you from your own body, and it becomes other. And I don't know how many of you are medical students, but there's a kind of culture in the medical students' world of kind of almost like deliberately alienating yourself from the bodies that you're dissecting. So you have to make them other, because if you keep thinking about what was this person's name, where were they born, where did they grow up, what's their story, it's very hard to be dissecting the nerves and to be so that there's a kind of deliberate pushing away and alienating. As an interesting little story, so I grew up on a farm, and so that there was a certain amount of animals being killed and sort of gutting chickens and such like. So I remember one day with my mother in the kitchen, and there was removing what they call the giblets from the insides of the chicken, and this pretty gory, gunky, smelly stuff, and it really off-putting, and stinky, and so as I said, I was always trying to figure things out, and so I can't remember. I mean, I was 3 or 4 years old, so I can't remember the details of the conversation. But it was along the lines of Mum, is that what we're like on the inside? And she said, oh yes, exactly the same. Just the same as the insides of the chicken. It's inside us too. And so then I asked, so do doctors ever get married? And she said, what? And I said, well, if you're a doctor and you know that's what goes on, what's what a person's body's like on the inside, would they ever want to get married to anybody? And she said, oh yes. That's not a problem. But if they know that's what somebody looks like on the inside, how could they fall in love with them? So I was about 3 or 4 at that point. So she said, don't worry, it's not a problem. So, yeah. And then she said, remember Dr. Stewart, he's, your friend Robert and his little brother, their dad's the doctor. Oh yeah, that's right, he's married. Yeah. So later on I realised it was that kind of the mind could make different sections. It could divide itself. But something in me was ready for the contemplation of the 32 parts at a very young age. But if you know what it's like on the inside, why would you be attracted to the outside? That was my logic at that age. So as I grew up, I realised it's more complicated than that. So anyway, the second part of your question was what?
If you have wisdom, so as you know about your mindfulness, as soon as you have the desire might come up inside of you, like a desire of your body, desire of different sex or something, and then if you got that, then you use your mindfulness, you go back inside of your emptiness, your mindfulness, then that will be disappear straight away. So therefore, the 32 parts of the body won't work anymore if you have the wisdom by that situation, by then.
If the wisdom faculty is that fully developed, I would say that the contemplation of the 32 parts, they're still there, they haven't vanished, but that wouldn't really be so necessary because the mind is already seeing things in a very, very clear and unobstructed unobstructed way. And so, but I would say that level of mindfulness and wisdom is rare in the world. That's not easy to establish that, where it's sort of automatic. More often, the attention gets caught by an attractive object, an attractive person, and then there's at least a little while, sometimes a long while, before the mind goes, oh yes, of course, there's a pancreas in there, a pair of kidneys, that's less appealing, all right. And then, so that kind of automatically seeing and recognizing things from the place of wisdom and seeing the empty nature of the skin and the bones and all of the physical fabric of other beings. That's I would say quite a high level of consistency in wisdom. That's if that can be established, great. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. But it's not easy to establish that kind of continuity of awareness at that kind of a level. Most of us, for moments here and there, or particularly in meditation, it's like, well, of course, duh. When you're sitting still, your eyes are closed, and then there's no, that you aren't in an active, engaged situation with other people. Then that can be glaringly obvious. Like, well, of course, how could it be otherwise? That's completely clear. But then as you open your eyes and you walk around and then you see other people, you go, oh. That one's interesting. And then, because that's the conditioning of the senses and the conditioning of our birth. So we practice to, and we use formal practice in particular to let those insights really sink in, to really to be taken to heart, so that when we open our eyes and we are around other people and engaged in activity and so on, when there's greater variety in the experiential field, then we're far less likely to get lost and carried away. We can continue to see things in their true light. So anyone from the back? We're at the only made it past the second row, or up to the second row. Yes, Ryan.
So does that mean in our Dhamma practice, the goal is to reach at a certain truth or reality that is permanent and unmovable and is beyond our five khandha?
Short answer, yes. I feel that I often quote that dialogue between the Buddha and Vacchagotta in the discourse of called Vacchagotta and Fire, the Agi Vacchagotta Sutta, number 72 in the Majjhima Nikaya, and that because I feel that in that's a particularly clear way that the Buddha speaks about his own experience and his own nature, and that how the Tathagata, that awake, aware, that embodied quality of a wakeful awareness, it can't be measured in terms of the five khandhas, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. It's not identified with that, but it knows that. It knows the five khandhas. It knows the world, clearly and without delusion. And so that I also feel it's the learning how to practice free of self-view is an important element of that, rather than, well, I've got to become that awareness. I've got to become that awake, aware quality because I am not that yet, or I've got to get that because I haven't got it. Then that unconsciously, again, the practice can be cast in the mold of self-view. I haven't got this, I need to get it. I am not this yet, I need to become that. And then without realizing it, the mind is inking in, I am the body, I am the personality, I was born, I am so many years old, this is my mind, my practice, my life, as unquestioned realities. So to shift the perspective, then I feel the teachings of Luang Por Chah and Luang Por Sumedho are extremely helpful in this regard. So that Luang Por Chah would talk about being Dhamma, not becoming Dhamma, but hearing Dhamma, practicing Dhamma, realizing Dhamma, and then being Dhamma. So that rather than not becoming, as if it wasn't the case already, but realizing, oh, this is what this being has been all along, that every aspect of this body, this mind is part of nature. Dhamma is nature, nature is Dhamma. So realizing all along the nature of mind is Dhamma. The mind is Dhamma, not a person. Oh, so it's not me getting something, but rather it's not me realizing the Dhamma, but rather the Dhamma realizing the me. So it's that change, the change of view is crucial in that. And that the more that attitude can shift, and that there is that recognition, then there isn't a me getting something that this me didn't have, but rather what the nature of that me has been all along, arising and passing away, female, male, old, young, artistic, mathematical, successful, unsuccessful, all those sets of perceptions have arisen and passed away in the sphere of this awareness. And the awareness is not female or male, old or young, has no nationality, no location, no shape, no size. You know, so that is a radical change of view. But if that's established, then that I would say that's that makes all the difference. So that the aim of the practice is that essentially that change of view, what they call the change of lineage, the no longer identifying with the body, the personality, and your name, your story, but instead there's that establishment of awareness, which is a natural function of the Dhamma itself. You already had one, so maybe other people could. There's lots of people here. Yes, please.
Ajahn, what are the techniques to stop your own education being an obstacle to open up with wisdom? If somebody has to gather...
If that's your livelihood as well. Well, it's not that education and intellectual capacity have to be a problem. It's believing in them as absolutely valuable, and the contents of our intellect and the information we have as being absolutely real and substantial. So that if there's a recognition that our knowledge is limited, and that even if our profession requires that we remember things, I mean, like being a teacher, doing a lot of Dhamma teaching, remembering particular suttas and which ones are where and what the numbers are. Takes a certain amount of mental acuity. Yeah, and the Buddha praised Bahusutta, someone who's learned a lot. The Bahusutta is a quality that the Buddha praised, but it's keeping it in context. So one of the ways that we can say keep things balanced is to engage in things which are non-conceptual, non-verbal, like physical sports. Yeah. Like getting out, going running, climbing mountains, physical engagement, going swimming in the sea. Just things that don't require calculation or memory, that are using the physical, non-verbal faculties, dancing, learning a musical instrument, swimming, mountain climbing. Rock climbing, these kind of things, they're involving the body and involving non-conceptual, non-verbal aspects of the mind. So if for recreation, if you have a strong intellect and your recreation is crosswords and Sudoku, it's like, it might be really appealing and you might really like that, really good Sudoku puzzle like that, but if you want to develop the other tracks, then probably more useful to learn the harp or to go to dancing classes or to take up hang gliding or that kind of thing. So that you're involving the whole body, and you're not using a lot of the conceptual and the sort of calculating conceptual faculty of the mind. So. I mean, I would leave it to people to make their own choices, but I would say that's what helps to balance things out. Like Richard Feynman, who was one of the world's leading physicists, he was a very keen drummer. He played a lot of drums, and that and he's got one of the brightest minds in the academic world. He was highly regarded. But he spent a lot of time drumming, very non-conceptual. But, so that finding channels, things that appeal to you or are interesting, that would be what I would suggest. Okay, the young gentleman in the front row, you can have one more. Unless your questions have run out. Yeah.
Just going around the top. So you said that you're just moving away from the egocentrics and not seeing self as just thinking like I and things. So does that mean you have to live like with purpose, or should it be no purpose at all? Just whatever convenient to you, or whatever offers you in like current life.
Well, as I was saying before, it doesn't mean... It means that we make choices and set direction, but that's guided by mindfulness and wisdom rather than by I and me and mine. So letting go of the self-view and that kind of ego-centered habit doesn't mean that that there isn't purpose or direction. The Buddha was very purposeful. After his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he did a lot of stuff. He was very creative and took a lot of initiative and was very purposeful in his words, his deeds, his travels. So if we just take the Buddha as an example, it's like he was not just sort of drifting with the wind, like a speck of cotton on the breeze, but he set intentions, he headed for different places, he followed up different initiatives and was extremely courageous in many of the things that he did, that he initiated and launched. And so that as I was saying, the skill of learning to be guided by mindfulness and wisdom rather than me and my plans and my preferences, that takes a lot of formal practice, I would say. Just sitting, doing sitting and walking meditation, watching the mind and learning that skill of action being guided by mindfulness and wisdom, rather than by I and me and mine. And also, if things go too far towards passivity, like towards sort of, well, I'm practicing letting go, I'm practicing non-attachment, and then it's being swept along by things, then to recognize, well, wait a minute, I'm abdicating from my ability to act and choose. Because oftentimes, as I said, oftentimes people assume any kind of choosing or decision-making is filled with tanha, with craving, but it's not the case. Otherwise there couldn't be samma sankappa, there couldn't be right resolution, right intention. So the setting of a direction in life, if that's based on mindfulness and wisdom, rather than me and mine, then we are. As that skill is developed, then life can be given a lot of direction, and it can be quite courageous. So sometimes people feel that any kind of action, any kind of choosing is anathema, is kind of against the Buddha's way. So no desires, no goal, no path, no practitioner, no nothing. And then we kind of freeze, or just sort of... but I would say that's a wrong grasping, a wrong understanding. Because so I don't want to interfere with the way things are, I'm just observing the way things are, just being with the way things are. But your capacity to act is part of the way things are. Your mind, your body is also part of the way things are. So, and I feel this is very often misunderstood, that rather than that your actions and your words disturbing the universe or interfering with the way things are, it's recognizing that no, these actions and these words are part of the way things are. These attitudes are part of the way things are. So that's why there's samma sankappa, samma vayamo in the Eightfold Path. That the direction can be given, action can be taken. That's completely in harmony with Dhamma. That doesn't produce any kind of suffering at all. It's like another T.S. Eliot poem, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Do I dare disturb the universe? I say, well, that's a wrong one, Mr. Eliot. Or maybe he spelled it out because he was meaning the opposite. Sometimes poets are like that. So, do I dare disturb the universe? And it's like, well, no, you are the universe. As if like, should I take action and do something, and that if I do something, that will disturb the universe? And I would say, well, maybe I can't read T.S. Eliot's mind or what he meant, but I would say no, that we are the universe, and that our actions and our words don't necessarily disturb, because they're a part of it. And I feel that when we talk about non-attachment or letting go, non-entanglement, people can pick that up and misinterpret that as a kind of passivity, just sort of freezing and just don't do anything. But I would say that's an incorrect understanding. So that the other day, I think maybe a couple of days ago, I was talking about the example of the Lord Buddha. He had chronic back pain. So sometimes there's about 6, 7, 8 instances in the suttas where he turns to Mahakachana or Sariputta or Ananda and says, Sariputta, my back is paining me. Yeah? I'm going to lie down and stretch it. The assembly is still awake. Please carry on giving them a Dhamma talk. And this is the Lord Buddha interrupting a Dhamma talk to go and lie down and stretch his back because his back is hurt, is painful. So to me, I think that's a great example of readiness to take action, to deal with suffering, and that his practice of non-attachment at that moment was to take action, to stop giving the Dhamma talk, get off the Dhamma seat, go and lie down, stretch his back to ease the pains that were there. But he wasn't creating a problem out of it. He wasn't, but he wasn't just going to carry on giving a Dhamma talk and ignore the painful feelings, which you would have thought, well, if he was really unattached, then he wouldn't have done anything. But I feel it's a really good example that sometimes non-attachment means take action. It doesn't mean be passive. It means get up and do something, like stop the talk, get up, like. Go to a private area and lie down and stretch your back. So that so sometimes a kind of languaging, non-attachment, letting go can be misinterpreted, and that when we're practicing non-attachment, we can end up being more engaged, more involved, and taking more risks than if we are not practicing non-attachment. So I feel that's a good place to draw things to a close for today. Thank you for your good questions.
Andamayang Dhammovadakataya sadhukarang tadamase sadhu 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 anumodami.